Hello, my friend. Tonight, we step into a place you hope you never visit, the medieval slave market. We're going to walk together, side by side, as you become a part of this brutal system. Close your eyes and imagine the acrid smell of smoke and fear hanging in the air, the distant shouts of men you don't understand, the feel of rough hands gripping your arm. You are a commodity now, a possession to be bought and sold. This isn't a story of brave knights or grand castles. This is the other side of the medieval coin. You probably won't survive this journey unscathed, at least not in the way you exist now. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The scent of burning thatch and roasted wood is thick, a dark blanket over the autumn air. Just moments ago, you were standing by your family's hearth, the warmth, a comforting presence. Now the warmth is a source of terror. The screams still echo in your ears, a chorus of panic and pain that will never truly leave you. They came swiftly, a tide of armed men, their faces hidden behind menacing helmets, and their voices, a guttural roar. One moment you were a free person in a small village, a life defined by daily chores and the familiar faces of your neighbors. The next, you are a captive, your hands bound with a coarse rope that chafes your wrists. The raiders don't care about your name, your family, or your history. To them, you're just part of the plunder. Another body to be counted and marched away. You trudge forward, stumbling over the uneven ground, the sharp rocks digging into your bare feet. A few paces ahead, you see your sister, her face stir with tears and soot, her eyes wide with a terror that mirrors your own. You try to call out to her to offer some small comfort, but a sharp jab from a spear shaft in your back silences you. Keep moving. A voice barks, harsh and foreign. The language is a jumble of sounds you've never heard before. Historians still argue whether these initial raids were more often orchestrated by large organized armies or by smaller opportunistic pirate crews. But for you, the distinction is meaningless. All you know is that your world has been shattered. As you walk, your mind replays the final moments of your old life. Your father, a man you always saw as a giant, was cut down trying to defend your home. Your mother was taken, but you lost sight of her in the chaos. The sense of loss is a physical ache in your chest, a deep, hollow emptiness. It's hard to believe that this is really happening. Your life has become a bad dream, one you can't wake up from. You steal a glance at the woman next to you, a neighbor you've known your whole life. Her expression is vacant, as if her soul has already departed. You wonder if you look the same. You feel a strange detachment, as if you're watching a play, a terrible, gruesome performance you somehow got dragged into. A quirky historical fact you might not know is that in some early medieval cultures, the capture and enslavement of women was so commonplace. A bride price was sometimes paid in captured slaves instead of currency. It was a brutal way to measure wealth and power. You now represent that wealth. You are a walking, breathing coin. The men who captured you, dressed in mismatched armor and carrying rusty swords, are already calculating your value. They see your sturdy build, thick-loused hands that speak of hard work, and the youth in your face. To them, you're not a person. You're an investment, a future worker, a potential breeder, a human to be bartered for goods or coin. The thought makes your stomach turn. The sun begins to set, casting long, distorted shadows of your captives onto the path ahead. The forced march continues, relentless and cruel. You look back one last time, hoping to catch a glimpse of the smoke from your village. But there is nothing, just endless, unforgiving horizon. The cold starts to creep into your bones, a killing reminder of your vulnerability. You are a piece of meat being driven to market, and your only hope is that you didn't get separated from your sister, who is now the only family you have left in this nightmare. As you stumble forward, you can't help but think about the stories your grandmother used to tell, tales of monsters and spirits that lived in the dark woods. You now realize the true monsters don't live in the woods. They walk right beside you and they wear human skin. The first step of your new life has begun. The march continues, an endless trudge that seems to stretch for days. The sun rises and sets, painting the sky in fiery hues. You're too exhausted to appreciate. Your feet, once accustomed to soft grass and well-traded dirt paths, are now a map of blisters and cuts. Each step is a fresh stab of pain. You feel your muscles screaming in protest, a dull ache that has become a constant companion. The captives, relentless in their pace, seem immune to fatigue. They're seasoned at professions, these raiders, and they know how to push their human cargo to the breaking point without actualizing them. There's a certain grim efficiency to it. You realize a cold calculus of survival. You try to keep your eyes on your sister, a few people ahead of you in the line. Her shoulders are slumped, and she moves with ashful, but she's still there. That's all that matters. You tell yourself that over and over, like a prayer. Just keep moving. Just stay close. You look around at the other captives, a mix of young and old, men, women, and even some children. Their faces are uniformly etched with exhaustion and despair. No one speaks. There's no need. The shared silence is a language all its own, a mute understanding of a fate too terrible to voice. One of the children, no older than 4, begins to cry. A sharp-head guard swoops in, pulling that child away from its mother. Your heart lurches and you want to scream, but you bite down on your lip instead. You can't afford to draw attention to yourself. The mother, a woman who had a kind face just days ago, now looks like a stone statue, her eyes following her child until it disappears into the crowd off guard. Historians still argue whether this separation was done to break the slave spirits, or simply because young children were often sold to different buyers, and thus a burden during the journey. To you, it's just pure unadulterated cruelty. The nights are the worst. When the sun dips below the horizon, the air turns frigid, and the guards chain you together, like anaclays of human misery. You huddle with the others, trying to steal whatever meager warmth you can. Sleep, Issa, fleeting visitor, haunted by the memory of fire and screams. You're given a small piece of stale bread and a cup of water each day, just enough to keep you from collapsing. Your stomach cramps with hunger, a hollow gnawing sensation. You've never truly been hungry before, not like this. A funny, morbid thought crosses your mind. At least you don't have to worry about what to cook for dinner tonight. The simple banality of that thought is so jarring that you almost laugh, but the sound dies in your throat. It's an absurd, cruel kind of freedom. The landscape changes subtly. The familiar forests and gentle hills of your home are replaced by a more rugged, unforgiving terrain. The air begins to smell of salt, a sharp, briny scent that you've only ever heard of in stories. The raiders, who had been a constant, menacing presence, seemed to become more excited, their voices louder and their movements more hurried. A quirky tidbit about this stage of the journey is that in some accounts, slave traders would deliberately use less traveled, more difficult routes to avoid being ambushed by rival groups or local authorities who might demand a share of their The discomfort is a form of protection. You realize your suffering is a side effect of their business plan. As you near the coast, you start to see the evidence of a more organized operation. A makeshift camp is set up, a collection of tents and crude wooden structures. The number of guards seems to double, and their discipline is more pronounced. They are no longer just raiders. They are now part of a larger machine. You are led into a holding pen, a large enclosure where you finally have space to sit down. You collapse to the ground, your body a heap of aches and pain. You see your sister and crawl toward her, a small, desperate movement. You wrap your arms around her, holding her tightly. She leans her head on your shoulder, and for the first time in what feels like an eternity, you feel a small, fragile sliver of comfort. The long march to the sea is over, but a new terrifying chapter is just beginning. You are led into a large, bustling camp, the air thick with the combined smells of human sweat, animal dung, and the ever-present salty temps of the sea. It's a cacophony of sound, the shouts of traders, the lowing of cattle, the wailing of a child somewhere in the distance. This is your first glimpse of the slave market, and it's nothing like the tiny village fairs you remember. This place is a city unto itself, built for one purpose, the buying and selling of human beings. Crude wooden pens liketh, one you're in, are filled with men, women, and children from all over. You see, people with dark skin, and people with light skin, people with straight hair, and people with curly hair. A mainstream historical fact is that medieval slave markets were incredibly diverse, with slaves being sourced from all over Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. You're not just a captive, you're an addition to a global inventory. The pen you're in is already crowded, and you have to step carefully to avoid treading on someone's hand or foot. You and your sister find a small patch of ground to sit on, huddling together. From this vantage point, you can watch the market in full swing. Men own rich clothing, their faces a mix of eagerness and cold calculation, walk among the pens, prodding and inspecting the merchandise. You try to look away, but morbid curiosity wins out. You watch a group of men being led out of their pen, their bodies oiled too, make their muscles glisten. They are made to run and lift heavy stones, their strength on display for potential buyers. A woman is paraded on a makeshift stage, her clothes a strange and vibrant pattern you've never seen before. A crowd gathers, shouting bids in a language you don't understand, but the meaning is clear. A quirky tidbit about these markets is that some traders would have their slaves sing songs from their homeland to demonstrate their culture and intelligence, hoping to fetch a higher price. It's a surreal image. Men and women forced to perform for their freedom, or at least for a better life in servitude. You can't imagine singing right now. The thought of it feels like a betrayal of your own misery. Your throat is still tight with fear. A little while later, a guard comes to your pen and pulls out a young girl, her face pale with terror. You watch her being led away, and your sister squeezes your hand so hard it hurts. She doesn't dare to say anything. You both know that your separation is coming. It's not a matter of if, but when. Historians still argue whether the family unit was ever considered in these transactions, or if it was simply a matter of profit with no regard for human connections. You're learning that profit is the only thing that matters here. The sounds and sights off the market begin to numb your senses. The shock is replaced by a dull, persistent anxiety. You become an observer, watching the world around you with a detached eye. You notice the small details. The way the light catches a gold ring on a trader's finger. The perfect white teeth of a man who smiles a little too wide. The tired slump of a young woman's shoulders as she's led away. You start to realize that every single person here is just a piece of agient, impersonal machine. You're no different from the cattle you saw earlier, waiting for your turn to be butchered or sold. As the day wears on, the guards bring in food, a watery stew that tastes of old vegetables and grease. You eat it without complaint, your body demanding fuel, despite your mind's protest. You need to be strong, you tell yourself. You need to survive. A woman next to you, older and with deep wrinkles around her eyes, looks at you and gives a sad, knowing nod. She gestures to your sister, and then to herself, and you understand her meaning. She too was separated from her family. You feel a pang of empathy for her, a small moment of connection in this sea of isolation. As the sun dips low again, the market doesn't quiet. Torches are lit, casting long dancing shadows, and the trading continues well into the night. It seems the machine never sleeps. You close your eyes, the image of your sister, a fixed point in the churning chaos. You hope that wherever she is taken, she will be safe. You have a toe, believe it. It's the only thing that keeps you from breaking down completely. The following morning, the guards come for you. The fear you've been holding at bay, a tight knot in your stomach, suddenly springs to life, taking over your entire body. You are pulled to your feet, your sister's hands slipping from your grasp. She tries to hold on, but Agard shoves her back into the crowd. You are led away, and the last you see of her is her tear-streaked face, Azalant's scream, frozen in her expression. The separation is brutal and swift, a clinical severing of the last tie to your old life. You are now truly alone. You are taken to a small, enclosed area behind the main market. Here, the process of turning you from a person into a product begins. Your clothes, worn and dirty from the long march, are roughly stripped from you. You're left standing naked, vulnerable, and completely exposed. The cold morning air bites at your skin, and you cross your arms over your chest in a futile attempt to preserve some dignity. A grizzled man, his face a roadmap of old scars, looks you over. He inspects your teeth, pokes at your muscles, and runs a hand down your spine, checking for any deformities or weaknesses. It feels like a doctor's examination. But instead, after caring for you, he's just assessing your value. A mainstream historical fact is that this physical inspection was a standard part of the slave trading process in many cultures, including medieval Europe and the Islamic world, where the health and physical condition of the slave directly impacted their market price. He gestures, and you're pushed toward a large tub of water, a murky, unpleasant-looking liquid. You are scrubbed clean with a coarse brush, the bristles scraping away the layers of dirt and grime, but also a layer of your... You no longer smell like the fields and the hearth of your home. You smell of cheap soap in the sea. After the bath, a brand is heated in a small fire. A quirky tidbit is that the specific location and shape of the brand could sometimes indicate the slave's origin or the trader's mark, serving as a kind of receipt or certificate of ownership. The branding iron is brought toward you, a piece of hot metal with a strange, twisting symbol at its end. You close your eyes, bracing for the inevitable pain, and then a searing agony explodes on your shoulder. The smell of burning flesh fills your nostrils, and you cry out, a sound Thetis lost in the den of the market. When the iron is pulled away, the pain lingers, a constant, throbbing reminder that you no longer belong to yourself. You are given a simple linen tunic to wear, a plain, shapeless garment that does little to cover you. It's an act of false modesty. You realize they make you look presentable, but they've already taken everything from you. The branding has sealed your fate, marking you as a piece of property, and that plain clothes are just the final step in preparing you for sale. As you stand there, your shoulders still throbbing, you catch a glimpse of your reflection in a small piece of polished metal. You barely recognize the person staring back at you. The girl who once smiled and laughed is gone, replaced by a hollow eyes. You are led to another pen, where you wait with other women. They are all in the same plain tunics, all with the same new, angry red mark on their shoulders. You look at them, and you see your own reflection in their eyes. The same fear, the same despair. It's a strange kind of solidarity, a sisterhood of suffering. You don't talk, but you don't have to. You understand each other perfectly. The silence between you is a conversation of its sound. Historians still argue whether these inspections and brands were purely for commercial purposes, or if they were also a psychological tool designed to strip the slaves of their identity and reinforce their status as property. No, it's both. The brand on your shoulder is not just a mark of ownership, it's a scar on your soul. It's a constant reminder that you are not a person, not anymore. You are now just a number in a trader's ledger, a valuable commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. The long, terrifying road to the auction block is almost at its end. The hours you spend in the holding pen feel like an eternity. You watch as other women are taken away. their faces a mask of numb resignation. You wait for your turn, your heart a frantic drumbeat against your ribs. The sun is high in the sky when a guard finally comes for you. He grabs your arm, the pain in your shoulder from the brand, a sharp reminder of your new reality. You are led out of the enclosure and into the heart of the market, a wide-open space dominated by a raised wooden platform. This, you realize with a sinking feeling, is the auction block. The platform is crowded with men, potential buyers. You assume, and you are led up a set of rough wooden steps. You stand there, a solitary figure in the center of the stage, with a sea of faces staring up at you. It's an audience, but not for a play or a performance. They are here to appraise you, to decide your fate. The auctioneer, a stout man with a booming voice, starts speaking rapidly in a language you don't understand. He points to you, gestures at your limbs, and a few men in the crowd nod in response. You feel like a piece of livestock, a horse being judged for its strength, or a cow for its milk. This isn't a battle or a struggle. It's an act of pure commerce, and you are the product. A mainstream historical fact is that in many medieval slave markets, a slave's value was determined by a wide range of factors, including their age, health, physical appearance, and any perceived skills, like weaving or cooking. The auctioneer is likely listing all of these things about you now, turning your life into a list of attributes and potential uses. He pulls on your arm, making you turn slowly so the crowd can get a better look. You feel a wave of humiliation wash over you, but you keep your face a blank canvas. Showing emotion, you instinctively know, is a sign of weakness. You are not a person with feelings right now. You are a thing, and things don't cry or show fear. As the bidding begins, a few men step forward for a closer look. One, a man with a neatly trimmed beard and an expensive-looking cloak walks right up to the stage and runs his thumb along your cheekbone. It's an impersonal, assessing touch, like a potter feeling the quality of clay. You want to shrink away to recoil from his hand, but you can't. You are frozen in place, a statue of your own design. A quirky tidbit is that in some markets, traders would place a leaf or a small charm in a female slave's hair to indicate her country of origin to a buyer. The buyers, it seems, were interested not just in your body, but in the exotic story it carried with it. You wonder if there's a leaf in your hair. You can't tell. All you can feel is the cold dread that this man might be the one to buy you. The bidding intensifies, a rapid-fire exchange of numbers and gestures. The auctioneer's voice grows louder, more excited. This is the climax of the show, the moment when your new life is decided. You try to catch the eye of someone, anyone, who looks like a decent person, but all the faces are a blur of avarice and curiosity. Historians still argue whether the buyers in these markets saw slaves as true cattle, or if there was a more complex, paternalistic view of ownership. You can't help but think it's a difference without a distinction. Whether you're a possessioner, a dependent, you are still not your own. You are owned. A man in the back raises his hand, his bid seemingly higher than all the others. The auctioneer's hammer comes down with a loud thud, and the crowd lets out a collective sigh. It's over. You haven't been sold. The man who touched your face smiles, a small triumphant curve of his lips. He looks satisfied. A guard comes up and takes you by the arm, leading you down the steps and through the crowd. You pass by other slaves, still waiting their turn, and you see the fear in their eyes. They are where you were just moments ago, and you are on a new path, a path with a new owner. You don't know who he is, where you're going, or what your life will be like now. All you know is that the auction is over, and your new life of servitude has officially begun. The new owner's grip on your arm is firm, not unkind, but intense. He leads you through the bustling market, past the crowds and the pens toward a more private part of the camp. You stumble along behind him, your mind a jumble of questions and fears. Who is this man? Where is he taking you? What will he make you? Do you still glance at his profile? A sharp nose, a well-kept beard, and eyes that seem to see you not as a person, but as a well-made tool. This man is a merchant, you realize, not a warrior. He is a man of commerce, and you are his light spurt. He leads you to a small, private tent. Inside, a much older man, seated on a pile of cushions, is hunched over a ledger, counting coins. He looks up as you enter, his eyes sweeping over you with the same cold appraisal as the others. The younger merchant speaks Tohim in the same strange language, gesturing toward you. A bag of coins is exchanged, and the older man makes a notation in his ledger. A mainstream historical fact is that in the medieval period, the transfer of a slave was a formal transaction, often recorded in a document or ledger, much like the sale of any other valuable asset. This act afterward, you realize, is the final confirmation of your new status. You area line item, a number in a book. After a few more words, the older man dismisses you with a wave of his hand. The younger merchant, your owner, leads you back outside. You now follow him toward the edge of the camp where a caravan is being assembled. It's a bustling scene of activity, men loading sacks onto pack animals, merchants shouting orders, and the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith working nearby. The caravan, you see, is a small city on the move, and you are now a part of it. A quirky tidbit is that merchants often traveled in large caravans for protection against bandits and to pull resources, making these journeys both a business trip and a community event of sorts, albeit a very temporary one. You're not just a slave. You're a member of a new forced community. As you walk, your owner speaks to you for the first time. His words are harsh and clipped, but you manage to pick out a few commands. Walk, wait, and don't cause trouble are the only ones you can understand. He doesn't care if you understand the rest. He expects you to obey. You are his property, and he is your master. The thought sends a fresh wave of despair through you. You've been bought and sold, and now you're being taken away from the only place you've known. However briefly, you try to remember your sister's face, to hold on to that last tearful image, but it's already starting to fade. Your memories are becoming as blurry as the faces of the crowd at the auction. The caravan sets off, and you are led to a covered wagon where you are ordered to sit. You share the space with a few other women, all of them silent and withdrawn. You look at them and you see the same blank expressions, the same resignation in their eyes. They too have been bought. They too are now on this road to an unknown future. The wagon begins to move, a slow rocking motion that lulls you into a state of semi-consciousness. The journey is long, and the landscape outside the wagon is a blur of passing fields and forests. You sleep fitfully, your dreams filled with ghosts of your past life. Historians still argue whether the initial owner-slave relationship was more about economics or power. But for you, the two are inextricably linked. This man owns you, and with that ownership comes a power that is absolute. He can do whatever he wants with you. He can sell you again, or he can put you to work in his home, or he can give you away as a gift. Your life is no longer your own, and your future is not yours to decide. As the wagon continues its journey, you'll feel a profound sense of emptiness, a hollow space where your hope and your dreams used to be. You are a tool and you have been bought by a man who is now taking you to your new life of servitude, and you can do nothing but wait and watch. The journey on the slave ship is a descent into a new kind of hell. After a long rocking trip in Thekaravan, you arrive at a bustling port city. The air, already heavy with the stench of human misery, is now mixed with the pungent aroma of brine and fish. The new owner, the merchant who boats you, leads you to a large wooden ship waiting in the harbor. The ship, Isa, massive groaning beast. Its sails furled like a sleeping creature. You can see other captives being herded onto it, their faces a mixture of terror and resignation. You are pushed up a narrow gangplank and onto the deck. The ship's crew, a rough hell-looking bunch of men with weathered faces, shout orders in a language you still don't understand. Below deck is a cramped, dark, and foul-smelling space. It's a literal pit of despair, with no light and little ventilation. You are led down a steep ladder and into the hold, a vast echoing chamber filled with the low moans of thecopiths. The air is thick and stale, a suffocating mix of sweat, sickness, and fare. You can barely see a few feet in front of you. A mainstream historical fact is that the conditions on slave ships during the medieval period were notoriously brutal, with captives often being packed in tight spaces with little food, water, or sanitation. The journey Nikan, as the Middle Passage in later periods, was a harrowing experience with a high mortality rate. You are now a part of this grim statistic, a human being packed like cargo. The space is so tight that you can't even sit up straight. You are forced to lie down, your body pressed against a cold, splintered wall. Your fellow captives, all women like you, are just as terrified. You can feel their bodies tremble with fear. The ship sets sail and the journey begins. The gentle rocking of the wagon is replaced by the violent lurching of the ship as it battles the waves. You feel a wave of nausea wash over you, and your stomach cramps with a new kind of sickness. The noise is constant, the creaking of the ship's timbers, the roar of the wind, and the relentless sound of the waves crashing against the hull. At night, that darkness is absolute, and the moans of the sick and the dying are a constant soundtrack to your misery. You huddle in a small corner, your knees drawn up to your chest, and you try to find a small sliver of comfort in the sea of despair. A quirky tidbit is that some slave ships, in an effort to keep their cargo healthy, would occasionally bring the captives to the deck for fresh air and exercise. They would even have them dance to music, a grotesque and forced display of merriment. You hope that you'll be one of the lucky ones who get to go on deck, but you also dread the thought of being forced to perform. It's a choice between two kinds of indignity. Historians still argue whether this practice was a form of paternalistic care or simply a pragmatic business decision to prevent the loss of valuable property to disease. For you, the motive is irrelevant. The outcome is the same. You are still a piece of property and you are still suffering. The days blend into one another, marked only by the meager meals of stale bread and a small cup of water. You become a master of rationing, making your small portion of bread last as long as possible. You learn to sleep, despite the constant motion, and you learn to ignore thesmal, the sounds, and the cold. Your body, once a source of strength and vitality, has become a vessel for pain and suffering. You are a ghost, a shell of your former self, your spirit slowly being eroded by the relentless brutality of the journey. As the days pass, you feel a growing sense of detachment. You are no longer the girl from the village, nor are you the woman from the auction block. You are now a shadow, a passenger in a ship bound for an unknown destination, and you are just trying to survive. After what feels like an eternity in the suffocating hold, the ship's motion finally slows. You can feel a change in the air, a subtle warmth, and the distinct absence of the relentless ocean spray. A few days later, you are finally brought up onto the deck. The light is blinding, and you squint against the sun, your eyes adjusting to the bright world above. The air is warm and humid, a stark contrast to the cold, damp hold you just left. You can see land, a lush green coastline stretching out before you. The smell of exotic spices and flowers fills the air, a heady mix that feels both invigorating and strange. You've arrived at your new port, a world completely different from the one you knew. The city you see from the deck is a marvel of architecture, with white domed buildings and tall thin towers that pierce the sky. The port is a bustling hive of activity, with ships from all over the world, their flags a riot of color. You are led off the ship and onto the docks, a chaotic scene of merchants shouting in new languages, sailors unloading cargo, and people in vibrant flowing clothes. A mainstream historical fact is that major port cities in the medieval period, particularly those in the Mediterranean, were melting pots of cultures and goods, with slaves being a significant part of the trade. You are now a part of this vibrant, bustling economy, a product of a global market. Your owner, the merchant who bought you at the last market, leads you through the crowded streets. The sheer number of people is overwhelming, and you feel tiny and insignificant in the face of this new world. The smells are intoxicating: sweet cakes, roasted meats, and pungent spices. The sounds are a mix of unfamiliar music, clanging bells, and the constant chatter of 100 different languages. You notice a few other women from your ship being led away by different men. Their faces a mix of fear and curiosity. You wonder what their fate will be, and if you'll ever see them again. A quirky tidbit is that in some port cities, slave merchants dress their new captives in bright local clothing to help them blend in and make them more appealing to local beer. Your plain linen tunic, however, marks you as a newcomer, a fresh piece of merchandise. The streets are narrow and winding, and you feel like you're in a labyrinth. You pass by open-air markets, where vendors sell colorful fabrics, carved wooden figures, and strange-looking fruits you've never seen before. The city is alive with energy, a stark contrast to the quiet, predictable life you once lived. Your owner seems to know exactly where he's going, and navigates the crowded streets with practiced ease. He leads you to a large, opulent-looking building with a beautiful courtyard and a fountain in the center. The place is a palace compared to the simple homes you're used to. You are led inside, and a sense of dread begins to creep over you. The merchant doesn't live here. He's just dropping you off. He bought you to sell you again. You are taken to a small room and left alone. The silence is deafening after the constant noise of the ship and the city. You sit on the floor, your back against the cool stone wall, and you finally have a moment to think. You've been a captive, a slave, and now you're being sold again. Your life is just a series of transactions, a commodity to be moved from one person to another. Historians still argue whether this multi-sale process was a common practice, or if it was more a matter of circumstance, with merchants often selling their captives to local traders instead of taking them home. You realize that the reason doesn't matter. The result is the same. You have no say in your own life. You are a tool to be used, and you are about to be put on the market again. The shock of this new world is beginning to wear off, replace it be. The bitter reality that you are still a prisoner, and your journey of servitude is far from over. The new slave market is a stark contrast to the one you left behind. Instead of a bustling open-air camp, this one is housed within a beautiful, sprawling courtyard. The sound is hushed, the atmosphere more refined. There are no raucous auctioneers or shouting merchants. Instead, quiet men in flowing robes stand next to their human wares, speaking in low tones to potential buyers. The air, instead of smelling of sea and sweat, is fragrant with jasmine and cinnamon. A mainstream historical fact is that in many parts of the Islamic world, slave markets were often more sophisticated and organized, with a greater emphasis on the presentation and perceived quality of the slaves. You're no longer just a piece of meat. You are now a luxury good. You are led to a small space next to a fountain where you are ordered to sit on a pile of soft cushions. You watch as a man who seems to be the owner of this new establishment looks you over with a practiced eye. He gestures to another woman who speaks the same language as you, a woman who has been here for a while. She is dressed in a vibrant silk robe, and her hair is braided with gold coins. She is a veteran of this world, you realize, and her eyes hold a deep world-weary sadness that you can already see in your own reflection. She is a reminder that this life can go on for a long time. A quirky tidbit is that in some of these refined markets, the enslaved women would be given lessons in music, poetry, and other arts to increase their value as potential concubines or domestic servants for wealthy households. You wonder if you'll be given a lesson. The thought of it is a strange mix of hope and dread. Hope for a slightly better life, but dread for what that life might. Historians still argue whether this education was a form of genuine investment in the slave's well-being, or simply a cynical marketing tactic. You suspect it's the latter. The woman who speaks your language comes over and sits next to you. She tells you in a low voice that this man is a broker. He buys and sells slaves, but he also prepares them for sale, teaching them the local customs and language. She tells you to learn as much as you can and to try to be useful. A useful slave, she whispers, is a slave who survives. Her words are a stark reality check. Your goal is no longer just to stay alive. It's to become valuable enough to be treated with some semblance of care. A few days later, a man in a magnificent turban and a long embroidered robe comes to the courtyard. He looks at you, and you can tell he is a man of great wealth and power. He talks to the broker for a long time, and you can see him gesturing at you. The conversation is punctuated by bursts of laughter and polite nods. He seems to be a discerning buyer, and he wants to know your story. The broker, a master of his craft, probably invents a story for you, making you sound more exotic and interesting than you are. You are no longer just a captured girl from a small village. You are now a character in a merchant's tale. The man in the turban buys you. The transaction is swift and quiet. A simple exchange of coins and a piece of paper. He smiles at you, a polite and kind smile that doesn't reach his eyes. His touch is light and respectful as he takes your arm, but it is still the touch of an owner. He leads you out of the courtyard and into the streets. You are a commodity that has been sold again. But this time the process was different. This time it was a transaction of grace and quiet dignity. A transaction that was no less brutal for its lack of noise. You're no longer in a place of open air, suffering. You are now in a place of refined, elegant cruelty. Your life is a story being written for you by men you've never met, and you're about to find out what the next chapter holds. The journey from the elegant, hushed market to your new home is short, but it's another world. You are taken through the winding streets, past the noisy bazaars and fragrant food stalls until you reach a large, imposing wooden gate. It's an anonymous-looking gate, but it's a door to your new life. You are led inside to a beautiful courtyard with a fountain at its center, surrounded by lush gardens. The air is filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the gentle sound of running water. It's a place of quiet beauty and opulence, and you feel entirely out of place. You herald into a large, well-lit room where you are introduced to the master of the house, the man who bought you. He gestures to a woman who stands in the corner of the room, an older woman with a severe face and a sharp as. She is the housekeeper. You realize the person who will be your immediate master. Her eyes sweep over you, taking in your simple tunic and the brand on your shoulder. She says something to you in the local tongue, her voice sharp and authoritative. You didn't understand, but her meaning is clear. You are to follow her and do what she says. A mainstream historical fact is that in many wealthy households, the management of domestic slaves was often left to a chief housekeeper or overseer. War was herself a slave or a freed woman. This person held a great deal of power and could be a source of both protection and cruelty. You know that you must not displease her. You are led to a small, humble room in the servants' quarters. It is clean and sparse with a simple straw mat for a bed and a small basin for washing. The housekeeper points to a pile of rough-spun clothes and gestures for you to put them on. You realize that your time in the plain linen tunic is over. You are now a domestic servant, and you will dress separate. You change into the clothes, which are coarse but clean. The housekeeper returns with a small bowl of porridge and a cup of water, your first meal in your new home. You eat it in silence. The taste of the warm porridge, a comfort to your weary soul. A quirky tidbit is that in some households, New slaves were given a new name, often one that was short and easy to remember, to further erase their old identity and reinforce their new status as property. The housekeeper does not give you a new name, but you know that she will not call you by your old one. You are a nameless servant, a face in a sea of other faces. You are a tool to be used, and your name is not important. You are simply the new one. You are just a body, a pair of hands to be put to work. The next few days are a blur of learning. The housekeeper, using a combination of hand gestures and simple words, teaches you the routine of the household. You learn to sweep the floors with a broom made of stiff straw, to clean elegant carved furniture, and to fetch water from the well in the courtyard. You learn to be invisible, to move through the house without being seen or heard. You learn to listen for the sound of a bell, a command that will summon you to your master's side. Historians still argue whether this process of assimilation was a form of education or a form of psychological conditioning. You realize it is both. You are being trained to be a perfect servant, a ghost in the machine of this grand house. You meet the other domestic slaves, a small community of women who work together in a silent rhythm. They are a mix of ages and backgrounds, and they all have the quiet, world-weary look in their eyes. They teach you the unspoken rules of the house, which rooms to avoid, which tasks to do with care, and which people to stay away from. They are not unkind, but they are wary. They have all been here for a long time, and they know the dangers of the house. You learn that your new life is not a life of freedom, but a life of rules and servitude. You are a domestic slave now, and this house is your new prison. The work in the household is relentless, a never-ending cycle of sweeping, scrubbing, and carrying. But you are not just a tool for cleaning, you are also a tool for childcare. One morning the housekeeper takes you to a different part of the house, a large room filled with toys and brightly colored blankets. A young boy, no older than 2, is playing on the floor. He looks at you with wide, curious eyes. The housekeeper gestures to him, then to you, and then to a cradle in the corner of the room. The meaning is clear. You are now a wet nurse. Your body, which has been through so much, is now being put to a new, unexpected use. The boy is the son of the master, and he needs to be fed. You are a source of sustenance for him, a warm body that can provide comfort and food. A mainstream historical fact is that wet nursing was a common practice among the wealthy in many cultures, as it allowed noble women to have more children in a shorter period of time. You are now a part of this system, a living tool for the master's family line. The boy is not your child, but your body doesn't know that. When you hold him, when you feed him, a strange maternal instinct takes over. You feel a pang of love for this child, a feeling that is both comforting and terrifying. The boy, whose name is Tariq, is a sweetened, gentle child. He smiles at you, his small hand gripping your finger, and you can't help but smile back. You spend your days with him, playing with his toys, and rocking him to sleep. You sing him lullabies from your homeland, the simple songs of your childhood, a bittersweet memory. You are a mother to a child who is not your own, and the emotional toll is immense. You love this boy, but you know he is not yours. He is a part of the master's household and you are just a temporary fixture in his life. You know that one day he will grow up, and you will be replaced. A quirky tidbit is that in some cultures that children of wet nurses and the children they nursed were considered milk siblings, and this could sometimes lead to a lifelong bond. Though this was rare for you, it's a distant hope, a wish that you and Tariq might one day have a connection that goes beyond your current servitude. Historians still argue whether wet nurses were respected or simply exploited for their bodies. You can see both sides of the coin. You are treated with a certain level of care and respect because you are essential to the well-being of the master's child. You are given more food, you are allowed to rest more, and you are treated less harshly than the other domestic slaves. But you are also a body, a tool. Your breasts are a resource, and your body is a means to an end. You are a mother without a child, and a servant without a choice. Your days are now defined by Tariq's schedule. You wake up when he wakes up. You eat when he eats, and you sleep when he sleeps. You are a part of his life, but you are not a part of his family. You watch as his mother, a beautiful, aloof woman, comes into the room to play with him for a few minutes before leaving again. She smiles at you politely, but her eyes are cold. You are just the help, the woman who keeps her child safe and fed. You are a ghost, a shadow in the corner of the room, and you are slowly fading away. You try to hold on to the last vestiges of your old self, to the memories of your home and your sister. But Tariq's small hand in yours, his gentle breathing against your chest, is a constant reminder of your new life, a life of servitude, a life of love and loss. You are no longer just a wet nurse. You are also a concubine. The shift from one role to the next is a gradual, insidious one. The master, the man who owns this house and the people in it, begins to pay more attention to you. He doesn't look at you with the cold, appraising eyes of a traitor anymore. He looks at you with a different kind of hunger, one that is more personal and more terrifying. You are still a piece of property, but now you are a piece of property with a special intimate value. You are Samanetso, his private quarters one evening, a luxurious room with plush carpets and a soft scented glow from oil lamps. You are no longer wearing the coarse clothes of a domestic servant. You are dressed in fine silk robes, and your hair has been washed and scented with exotic oils. The master is kind in a way. He speaks to you gently, and he doesn't force you to do anything you don't want to do. But you know that the kindness is a gilded cage. You have no power, no choice. You are a concubine, a woman who lives to serve her master's pleasure. A mainstream historical fact is that concubinage was a common practice in many medieval societies, especially among the wealthy. Concubines were often slaves, and their status, while sometimes elevated above that of other servants, was still precarious and dependent on the whims of their master. You learn the unspoken rules of this new role. You are to be beautiful, you are to be quiet, and you are to be always available. You are not a wife, and you have no legal rights. You are not a domestic servant, but you are still a slave. You are in a strange liminal space, a gray area between freedom and servitude. You are given better food. You are dressed in finer clothes, and you are treated with a certain difference by the other servants. But you know that this status is a fragile thing. It can be taken away from you at any moment. A quirky tidbit is that in some cultures, a concubine could gain her freedom if she bore her master a child. This child, if recognized by could also be a source of power and influence for the mother. You wonder if this is an option for you, a way to gain some control over your life. The master's wife, a stern and jealous woman, is a constant reminder of your precarious position. She looks at you with cold, calculating eyes, a mix of contempt and fear. You know that she sees you as a threat, a rival for her husband's affection and attention. You are careful to stay out of her way, to never speak to her, and to never meet her gaze. She is a powerful woman, and her anger could be a death sentence for you. Historians still argue whether concubines were seen as a threat to the established family unit, or a necessary part of a household's social structure. You, however, know that you are a threat. You are a living reminder of your master's power and his wife's lack of it. Your life is a paradox of luxury and imprisonment. You have beautiful clothes and fine food, but you are still a prisoner in a cage of your own design. You have a position of power, but it is a power that is entirely dependent on the whims of your master. You are a concubine, a slave with a beautiful name and a fragile existence. You are a woman, has been bought and sold, and now you are a woman who is loved but not free. You live in a world of opulence and fear, and you are a ghost in the machine, a beautiful but silent presence in a house that is not your own. You realize that your life is a story being written for you by men you've never met, and you are just a character in their play. The life of a concubine is a dangerous dance, and you are learning steps quickly. You live in a world of silent signals and veiled threats. You are a special kind of property, a slave who lives in luxury, but you are still a slave. Your time is no longer your own. Your days are dictated by the master's whims and the unspoken rules of his household. The other domestic slaves, the ones who once looked at you with a kind of weary empathy, now look at you with a mix of resentment and pity. They see the fine clothes, the extra food, and the lack of back-breaking glamour, but they also see the price you pay for it. They see the cold glint in the master's wife's eyes, and they know that your position is a fragile one. You spend your days in a beautiful room, a chamber filled with soft cushions and elegant tapestries. You are given a lute, a stringed instrument that you learn to play. Your fingers, once calloused from hard labor, are now soft and nimble. The music is a strange comfort, a way to escape from your own thoughts, a way to fill the long empty. A mainstream historical fact is that in many wealthy households, concubines were often trained in music, poetry, and dance, as these skills were seen as a way to entertain the master and elevate the status of the concubine. You are a walking, breathing piece of art, a living ornament in the master's house. You are also a repository of secrets,